it would seem that those particular forces had been outflanked by the rebels and were possibly cut off from the rest of their units. The other thing that we observed with the rebels was a great deal of courage, really, and bravery and determination putting forward, and yet at the same time stopping as they were fleeing, as some of them were fleeing at great speed, the increased mortar fire that was moving closer and closer. They still took the time to stop and rescue a bunch of stranded journalists as we also were fleeing from the front line.
And Jackie, do they tend to sort of regroup somewhere else and then come back to try to kind of re-establish their positions? Is that how they're operating?
Very much so, yes. It's an ebb and flow all the time. There's people really hightailing it out of the firing zone, and then there are fresh troops coming in. I mean, we retreated. Essentially, we had advanced about 10 kilometres to the west of Ras Lanuf. We had advanced all the way, really, to the oil port at AlJazeera, and this is where the front line was, very clear. We could very, very clearly see the pro-Gaddafi mortar fire, as well as the bombing raids from overhead, and all these heavy pieces of artillery in place, in particular the multiple rocket launchers that the rebels had. Now, as they were fleeing, some of them were fleeing back from the firing zone, but at the same time we would see other forces moving forward. And as we got back to Ras Lanuf, the forces were regrouping, people were pushing forward, and all the way on the road back east, first to Al Breka and then to Ajdabia, all the way along the road we saw pickup truck after pickup truck, also big lorries, big trucks loaded up with fighters. We saw some quite heavy weaponry being moved towards the west. So although the Gaddafi fighters do appear to be launching a serious counter-offensive, the rebels are not in any way showing any signs of being prepared to back down.
OK, Jackie, thank you very much indeed for that update. Well, the turmoil in Libya continues to wreak havoc across world energy markets. Oil prices resumed their rise on Wednesday as the violence edged closer to Libya's infrastructure. But several countries now look set to benefit from the price inflation, not least Russia. Neve Barker has the story from Moscow.
Oil markets are nervous places at the moment, and Russia is no exception. The race is on to find regions promising a reliable supply. In Europe, the price of Brent North Sea crude oil spiked at $119 a day at the end of last month, while in recent days, US light sweet crude peaked at almost $105 a barrel, the highest in 2.5 years. Though Saudi Arabia has promised to make up for any shortages, that hasn't cut prices much. Now Russia has offered a cheaper alternative. Shares at Russian energy firms Gazprom, Rosneft and Lukoil have traded at a 40% discount for major Western oil companies like Exxon, Chevron and ConocoPhillips.
It seems that investors are really thinking that, first of all, this is a significant move in the oil price, not just a one-day spike. The higher prices go up, the higher oil price go up, then the more profits Russian companies will be making.
The Russian government has said that if the price of oil remains at $100 a barrel, then Russia will be able to balance its budget within 3 years. Well, if the price of oil remains as it has been, consistently high, then Russia can look forward to achieving these goals much, much sooner, all while many Western powers struggle with substantial national debts. But if oil problems turn into a crisis, some are predicting prices of more than $200 a barrel. And that could lead to a collapse in demand everywhere. Prime Minister Vladimir Putin has already warned that rocketing oil prices pose a serious threat to the world. In Russia, energy companies generate around a third of the nation's wealth. If prices do spiral, even here, any short-term gains could end in long-term woes. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
Let's get more news from Europe now and head back to Stephen Cole in London. Stephen?
Thanks, Lauren. Enda Kenny has been elected as Ireland's Prime Minister. The Fine Gael party leader vowed to resolve the country's banking bailout crisis. Mr Kenny said he aims to renegotiate the terms of the bailout, making them more affordable for Ireland. 9 people have been arrested in London and Reykjavik in connection with the collapse of Iceland's Kaupthing Bank. Tycoons Vincent and Robert Cengiz are believed to be among those being questioned in the UK. 135 police and serious fraud office investigators were involved in the raids. Capturing one of Iceland's main commercial banks collapsed 2 years ago. The British government has announced that the display of cigarettes and other tobacco products in shops will be banned in England. Ministers are also looking at other measures to help cut the number of smokers in the country, such as plain packaging. Rory Challenge reports.
All over Europe, smokers are under attack. There are bans on puffing in public from Spain to Britain to Greece and beyond. And now governments are legislating on how tobacco products are sold. Cigarette displays like this will soon disappear in England. Big stores will have to get rid of theirs by April 2012, and small stores, well, they'll have to have theirs out of sight by April 2015. And then there's this, plain packaging for cigarettes. Ministers are going to start a public consultation on whether the UK is going to be the first European country to introduce it. The point of all this is to make the habit less appealing for young people and reduce the massive health costs of caring for diseased smokers.
Most people start smoking very early. The average age in the UK is 13 or 14. And of course, that's not the sort of age you're doing things, sensibly. You're doing it because of peer pressure and the rest of it. The tragedy is that they're then going on for years and years and finding it very difficult to stop.
Scotland and Northern Ireland are planning similar legislation, but sellers say there's little evidence that putting the cigarettes out of sight helps.
Ireland have had a display ban now for 18 months, and they've actually seen youth smoking increase, and the retailers are losing 20% of their sales overnight when it was introduced.
But the tide is certainly turning against the European smoker. For one reason or another, they could be a dying breed. Rory Challenge, AlJazeera, London.
And that's all from London. Time to rejoin Lauren in Doha.
Thanks, Stephen. A Tunisian court has dissolved the political party of the ousted President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. The Constitutional Democratic Rally, or RCD, was suspended last month, pending the court's ruling. Ben Ali used the party as a way to maintain power during almost 2 decades as leader. Nazneen Moshiri reports from Tunis.
Celebrations outside a Tunis courthouse. This is the moment many have been waiting for. The RCD, which ruled with the former President Ben Ali for 23 years, no longer exists.
This is an extraordinary end to a party that once had the membership of more than 2 million people. These people say they no longer want to be associated with the remnants of Tunisia's past regime.
In the past week, the country has gone further than Egypt to rid itself of an apparatus linked to decades of repression, dismantling the nation's political police and preparing to rewrite the constitution.
Today is a new era, a new country, a new page in our history, in our democracy, in our everything. Today we are building our heritage, our culture, our life. Today, the people, they say no, no, no.
Mohamed Ghariani is the highest-ranking member of this now dissolved party. He accepts the decision and for the first time makes this admission.
I apologize for